We're in this really high-speed environment where things need to be instantaneous, but the garden is a genuine reminder of the fact that you exist in this greater context of things around you.
I've seen some of the shyest people I've ever met come into the garden space. A year later, they've taken the sunnies off, they've decided to join the committee.
I love the garden, I love the setting, I love just the whole environment is so good.
Welcome to the Social Innovations Warrnambool podcast, brought to you by the Fletcher Jones Family Foundations. I'm Kirsten Diprose, a nearly local based in Karamat. Okay, so I'm actually starting this episode in the car as I drive through the suburbs of Warrnambool, just east of the CBD, because that's where the revelation began for me. Driving along one day on a Wednesday afternoon and seeing all of these cars just pulling up in a grassy area. And I was like, what for? Is it kids' sport? And no, to my astonishment, it's a beautiful 6-acre space full of small garden plots, veggie patches and a market stall in the middle of suburbia. How did I not even know about this? And this parcel of land that is for the community has come a long way. It was originally a wasteland. It was overgrown with weeds and blackberries, with a giant hole in the middle where there was a quarry. And about 15 to 20 years ago, a small group of people came together with some very big plans. And actually, one of the ideas for the quarry was to clean it up and cover it with a giant dome like some sort of futuristic hothouse. But with a $10 million price tag, that idea had to be scaled back somewhat and revised. But don't worry, what's in the works now is just as ambitious. So I'm very excited to be pulling up here again on a Wednesday afternoon, but what's most fascinating is why the gardens are so important to people. For some, it's had a transformative effect on their lives. I enter the gardens and I'm greeted by Rob Porter, a past president and member who's been there since the beginning. It's pretty busy, people tending to their garden plots and kids running around, enjoying the unusual sunshine on a regular windy Warrnambool day.
So the community garden is about a 6-acre space. Around about 2 acres is what we're looking at here, that was established as a garden back in 2007 through to 2010 or 12. We can see lots of garden beds in front of us, and these are what we call private plots. So it's the one area of the garden where people can have their own gardening space. So members can hire one of these plots on an annual basis. There's just under 60 of them. Less than half our members have a plot. Most of them are in the garden for the communal aspects, but some people, for a whole range of reasons, also like to have their own gardening space here. The other things that we can see is like an open shed/building, which is actually part of our disability gardening area. There's raised garden beds up there. There's workbenches in there that are at multiple heights, so they can be worked at sitting or standing.
And we've had just a whole bunch of kids stream past us. Where are they coming from?
So every Wednesday we have what we call the Sprouts Club. Today they've been doing activities up in our kitchen, actually decorating Christmas cookies. The other things that we can see, some other garden beds over past that red truck. That's the main communal gardening, vegetable gardening area. So when people come in to do stuff together with vegetable gardening, the majority of that activity happens over there, whether it's in those plots or it's in the hothouse, which you can just see peeping out behind the gum tree there. Apart from that vegetable gardening aspect of it, there's also tending fruit trees. The natives planted on the boundary really stand out, but in front of them there's a row of fruit trees. There'd be 30 or 40 trees probably all up.
You're a past president, aren't you?
Yeah.
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 Why do you love the gardens? Why are you involved?
I initially joined because I enjoy what I refer to as heavy gardening. Give me a chainsaw or a whippersnipper or a ride-on mower or anything like that, and there's limited amounts of that you can do in a suburban block. Here on 6 acres is, it's my that practical side of things is my idea of good fun. But once I started coming here, it very quickly became about being able to do things with other people. The gardening is an amazing vehicle and COVID really emphasised this. And I think the really big thing is about groups of people coming together and doing stuff together, hopefully achieving some success with whatever they're doing. But if they're not, they're learning. And it doesn't matter if you're an expert or a beginner or somewhere in between, everyone's sharing. And it's just working it out together.
Gardening's problem solving.
It is. Yeah, in a really healthy environment. Apart from the fact that I really enjoy doing stuff with other people. During COVID, a huge body of research that was already in place was suddenly brought out again about the psychological and emotional benefits of doing things with other people, and then the multiplier effect of that if the activities you were doing were close to nature. Gardening ticks all those boxes. So does bushwalking and a whole lot of other stuff, but for us, gardening and things associated with gardening are there. Yeah.
Were you open through COVID or did you have to close?
Because we run the produce market, we were a protected industry, if you like, and that meant that everything that feeds into that, so growing the produce, was also protected. And the other thing that we had is because it's a 6 acre site, people could come here and get some mild exercise and still be easily social distancing. And we have a very mixed age membership, but there's definitely a bit of a peak in the upper ages, especially for people who come during the week, because if you're not retired, usually working, and for that age group, gardening is absolutely a good exercise. Yeah, so the two things, the market and being able to get good exercise in a socially distanced way allowed us to keep operating.
Yeah, it would have been a sort of a godsend for the community because not many things were open.
No, and so many of our members commented that, especially when we started going into the second year, this was their sanity. It also made us look at what we were doing in a different way. So that focus on people doing stuff together, providing opportunities for people to do things together. Those opportunities had always been there. We became a lot more explicit about that because of that experience.
What else have you got here on the site that you haven't shown me?
So over my right shoulder is the quarry. So this site was the last working limestone quarry in Warrnambool. It closed in the early 60s. It was basically a wasteland from then until when the garden came on board in about 2007. And there's still a great big hole in the ground over here. And in 2018, a team led by Jeff Rollinson, who's a foundation member and past convener and jack of all trades, actually got a lot of funding from what was called Pick My Project, which was a state government series of grants at that time. And the committee had the garden, I suppose, had the foresight a couple of years earlier to actually start working on concept plans for what might be able to be done with the quarry. On the right-hand side is basically what
we head over to the quarry to take a look. And it really doesn't look like a quarry anymore. It's all covered in grass. It's more like a mini Sydney Myer music bowl. And that's kind of what the plan is. Warrnambool's very own amphitheatre for music and events.
You can see the rocks on the right-hand side. That was basically this whole area. A huge amount of work has been done.
How'd you get the grass in?
It's been shaped and built up. So lots and lots of fills come in and doing a whole lot of soil testing and everything. The contaminants in the soil we were really surprised. It was very positive that there was not much at all that wasn't just normal background stuff in Warrnambool. But it still decided it was better to build up and shape rather than carve down into the existing floor. A lot of that rubble is still there. It's just under a whole lot of soil. So you couldn't walk across here without risking your ankles.
Jeff Rollinson joins us too. As Rob mentioned earlier, Jeff really drove the transformation of the quarry. Jeff is passionate about the environment and is also involved in land care. But he basically needed to get across geology too to make this project happen.
We had Professor John Sherwood come in and have a little bit of an outdoor classroom session about the geology of the quarry. And yeah, twice in the last 100,000 years this has been the seabed floor. So over a period of time, soil built up on top of the sand dunes, which shifted a lot, and then the waters came in again as sea level rose. And so that's pretty much original as you see it there. So the plan is, apart from running events in the quarry, we want to do a whole lot of interpretive stuff to tell that story. Rock's uninteresting to a lot of people, but there are a lot of people that are interested in geology.
I mean, Warrnambool's got a really interesting sort of volcanic rock history in the surrounding area.
Yeah, it has. You're quite right there, the Mount Elephants and the Mount Rouses and whatever that erupted over time, and including Tower Hill. Yeah, so it is an interesting example of it. This is not volcanic, this is human produced. But we were talking about that transformation before. If you go back 5 years ago, it was actually impossible to come into the quarry because there were voids everywhere, blackberries everywhere. We had some offers from people that had goats who wanted to send them down into the quarry to clear up the blackberries before we started all of that work. We had some pretty interesting suggestions about, apart from an amphitheatre, one of them was to put a huge glass dome over the top.
Yep.
And so that was going to cost the order of $10 million to do that.
Huge glass dome over the...
Yeah, so there's a Project Eden, which is in England, so there's a huge dome there, and that had virtually turned it into a sort of a walk-in domed hothouse. Another suggestion was just fill it in. And quarries and holes are, I guess, to some people seen as a bit of a problem, so there was no way that we were going to take up that option.
How much would that cost?
If you do the rate per cubic metre of soil, you'd be talking probably millions as well. We had an opening of the quarry November 11 last year. I think in the order of 500 people turned up.
500 people? That'd fill this space quite easily.
Actually, no. I think we've done the figures. We took a cautious approach and actually limited the tickets to the first events, but the estimates it could easily accommodate a crowd of about 800 or 1,000, so double that figure. And there would be that everyone has a square metre and a half to themselves, so yeah.
That event at the end of 2024 really heralded in a new era for the community gardens. It was the first open day in 5 years, showcasing the new quarry amphitheatre, the herb garden, a sensory garden, and super fancy chook shed, dubbed the Chook Hilton, with some seriously show-winning chooks in there as well. And the event itself won Warrnambool Community Event of the Year and has since been followed up by Harvfest in March 2025, where hundreds of people gathered in the quarry for food, music and fun. It's clearly becoming more than just a garden. And a big part of this new era is its relatively new convener, Courtney Matthew.
Community is something that we've lost a lot of during the last few years, and even prior to that. I've always lived rurally, and having that, ask someone down the road for something, I guess this is like a modern version of that. People sharing their knowledge, sharing their skills, and I think between the combined knowledge of all the gardeners that have shared their tips with me, I've saved 200 years of experimentation. It's that real generosity, I think, that places like this allow spaces where people can just give and not expect anything in return. It's like an extended family. So it's not only just the physical gardening aspect, but it goes much further than that.
Have you always been an avid gardener?
Yeah, from an agricultural family, and Grandpa always had a sort of rambling patch. Mum's always gardened. So yeah, it's always been something that we've had around us in varied levels of success. But I think the thing here is there's a space to experiment and try different things because it's such a large site. You can sort of trial things that you might not have room for at home. And yeah, I've been a bit of a garlic farmer the last few years. I've really enjoyed experimenting with different varieties, and garlic's fantastic because everybody loves being given garlic, so it makes you many friends, although not after you eat it perhaps.
Courtney has a career background in marketing, communications and events, and she actually only returned to Warrnambool about 5 years ago after having spent most of her 20s overseas, including in Japan. For her, the community gardens have been a nice reintroduction to her hometown.
So I arrived back just as COVID started, so it was pretty grim. We were all in isolation, but because it's a community garden, we were able to continue operating without being in restrictions. So we had these hilarious working bees where we're all socially distanced and masked up outside, like 10 metres away from each other, following these guidelines. And yeah, it just was an outlet where you could escape the kind of cycle of doom that the news was and just come here and be really present and feel like you were contributing to something within your realm that actually had an impact, rather than watching this global pandemic unfold and the anxiety that came along with that. So yeah, really for me it was about connecting, and also the intergenerational connections. You know, your cohort of friends might be a couple of years older, a couple of years younger, but here it's a really dynamic group from people. I think our oldest member's like 81 or something, and we've got little babies. There was just a gorgeous little bub there tonight eating dirt. So it's from all spectrums and all ends of the scale. It doesn't matter what you earn, what you do for a job, what your interests are. Gardening, nature and food and celebration is a uniting thing we can all do together.
Sounds like utopia.
It is. It's paradise.
Paradise. But the intergenerational friends I think is really interesting, because I think as society we're meant to have relationships and friendships with people from all different age groups and walks of life, but we seem to silo ourselves off in modern society.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and it's not so much, you can always learn something from someone else, so seeing things from different points of view and understanding that everyone's had their own life journey. So yeah, when you come here, you've got this common passion, common goal.
People often say that gardening is therapy.
Yes.
Have you seen that firsthand, whether that's for yourself or other people that have come to the garden?
Absolutely. I think for a lot of people it's been a place of solace, and then at the same time it's a place of connection. So it serves this dual purpose of what the garden needs to be for you. So whether you want to feel a sense of purpose, connection, working together, or whether you would like to work completely alone and just have the natural surroundings and listen to the birds, it really is such a dynamic space, and anyone can come and appreciate it for what they need, for what they're looking for in their life. And I think for a lot of people, health and well-being, it goes just beyond what a doctor can do for you. It's about your sense of purpose, your sense of what am I here for, and is there something that creates that deeper meaning for people. But I think, reflecting myself personally, there's been opportunities that I've had, perhaps trying to slow down and try to live more with the pace of life. I think for a lot of people, they might have had a trauma or something that's happened in their life, that a tragedy, and they're not quite ready to come back to hardcore social situations. And this can be stepping stone, where it's, I want to work near you but not with you, and then gradually over time we find that they're coming back to join in the full group and to feel their confidence rebuild. And yeah, there's been plenty of times where the garden's been that support for people through these situations.
Jeff has also witnessed this happen multiple times since the gardens opened.
I've seen some of the shyest people I've ever met come into the garden space. A year later, they've taken the sunnies off, they've decided to join the committee as the secretary, and it completely changes their experience with moving in community. It's stunning to see that happen, and I've seen that happen quite a few times.
Why do you love the garden so much? Why are you involved?
I love it for the new opportunities to do stuff in the space. So the quarry, the amphitheatre, the shelter, there seems to be endless opportunities to think about other stuff that we can do that might be just really interesting features of the garden. So that's why I love it, and loved it from day one for that reason, that it was a green and brown blank canvas that was, we had a lot of flexibility to think about hothouses and think about the hub building and think about putting in some structures within the garden. So yeah, I guess it's the diversity of project opportunities, the diversity of people coming to the garden, and the ability to transform people.
And the site itself continues to transform. It was actually originally inspired by Sarah's, a stunning community garden, urban farm and education centre in Melbourne's north. And it also started as a wasteland. The area, which is in Brunswick East, had been quarried for bluestone and then turned into a landfill site. But in 1982, a small group of people approached the local council about making use of the land to grow vegetables and make compost. And from there, it's grown. They had a massive clean-up, planted new trees, revegetated the area, and the absent kingfisher birds returned to the area. While the Warrnambool Community Garden is its own entity, it's really drawn upon the lesson of series and its community integration to come up with sustainable partnerships and initiatives. Warren Water, the local water corporation, has been very supportive since the early days.
Somebody from Warrnambool Water came over and said, look, we've just built this really big facility at Gateway Plaza. We're very embarrassed about the fact that our surplus sandwiches go into the landfill. So would you guys be interested in adding it into your compost heap? And so they actually set up a 3-bin system at Warrnambool Water to process that food before Warrnambool City Council did. So we've been receiving that surplus food for some time.
Oh wow. Anyone else give surplus food here for composting?
So we also get coffee grounds. It's a 2 or 3 stage composting system over there, and so the reward is that gardeners can also have the byproduct. We've received materials from the nearby racing clubs, so horse stable byproduct being the sort of straw and the horse poo. That's come here in the past. We've had a whole series of wood chip suppliers come in who do the roadside clearing so that those materials come in.
The gardens have also made some really good use of water runoff.
There are some concerns that the water was cutting a gully down through into the amphitheatre area, and we went to Warrnambool Water and said, look, we can actually make very good use of that water. And so we came up with the concept of developing a gully, and eventually we'll have boardwalks. So we're in the early stages of getting the groundworks done before the pass and that to be put in. In Warrnambool, I think very few people realise that 90% of Warrnambool's water comes from the Jellybrand River, so that's a very long journey, 100 kilometres from the Jellybrand River to the treatment plant at the top. And we saw the gully not just as an opportunity to create a lovely little walk with trees and natives and whatever, but to turn it into a bit of an educational site. And just in front of us now, I'm also looking at a shelter that tells the story of going upstream, and it was funded through a project where we popped somebody in a kayak and they kayaked all the way up the Jellybrand River, and in the process took some amazing footage of the state of the river, and we thought, let's produce a few videos and let's have a sign in the shelter that sits in front of us to talk about Warrnambool's water supply. And so the whole idea is to stimulate interest in the backstory of where the water comes from. But if we can get those brains stimulated to say you need to appreciate where your water comes from, then we think that's a good idea.
And walking through the garden plots, I came across a group of children tending to their veggies, and I had a chat to one of the mums, Katrina Carey, who says her 7-year-old boy absolutely loves gardening.
I have some friends that have a plot here, so they hire the plot to grow some veggies, and my son is an avid gardener. He's 7, so we come down on a Wednesday afternoon and help them with their little plot there, and today we're just painting some rocks to put into the garden. We like coming to the market as well and getting the local produce and flowers and relishes and that sort of thing. So that's basically the extent of our involvement. It's just a beautiful space to be with all the kids, and we get random kids coming up and joining our picnics and painting rocks, so it's really nice.
And where did your son's love of gardening come from?
He loves a good process, like something where there's a start to finish sort of process, and we started setting up a garden when we moved down here, and he started watching Gardening Australia, and he loves this idea of having all your tools out and then following the process of planting or whatever it might be. So he really got into it from that, I think, and I think he just enjoys being outside and doing something active.
It's clear the gardens can mean so many different things to different people. While Warrnambool is set in amongst some of the best agricultural land in the country, its growth as a regional centre means it's become increasingly urbanised. Convener Courtney Matthews says most of the people who are involved in the gardens care deeply about land and environment and want to have that connection.
I think people who are really concerned about where does their food come from, what can they do to empower themselves and to live a more sustainable life. But I think for us, it's really thinking about that place-based activism and what can we do in our backyard. So we're always looking at what other people are doing and whether we can replicate something like that here, because if an idea is working somewhere, there's every chance that we could just implement it here and have great success. You know, looking at expanding our compost, whether we can have people bring their scraps in and build that's already happening. So what can we learn from other places and implement it rather than trial and experiment ourselves? And yeah, it's been really interesting, different biochar. Yeah, there's a lot of cool people doing things all around the world. I listen to a lot of podcasts and listen to, there's some farm-based ones, community garden ones not so much, so maybe that's what's next. We've got to start a podcast.
I know someone who can help with that. But we were just chatting to someone then who had just come to the market to buy their lettuce from here rather than buying it from the supermarket.
Wrapped in plastic.
Yeah, rather buy it here than all the food miles and all of the plastic and I suppose the extra costs that are involved as well. Do you find people quite interested and mindful of that?
Exactly. Someone's paying for that. The whole supply chain is just, it's so complicated versus here. You literally greet the person who picked that food and grew it. And yeah, I think that is so true, especially when we look at the impacts that everybody has collectively. So every small choice that people make altogether has this greater outcome. And yeah, I think that's really concerning for people to know that, you know, how long ago is this picked? What's the nutrition of this? If you can see it's all grown here, natural principles, and it tastes better because it's in season, it's fresh. The benefits are endless. It might take a little bit more planning because you've got to come here when the market's on versus 9 o'clock at night going to the supermarket. But I think people are willing to prioritise the things that are going to have this greater good.
And so while I was there, I thought I'd better head over to the market stall myself. And that's where I found Christine Morris. And I learnt my lesson. Clearly I should have done this first, before taking the tour.
So tell me what you've got in front of you that you're selling.
Kohlrabi, beetroot, parsnips, celery, fennel, lettuce. What else have we got? Silver beet, herbs, lemons. That's what we have left. We've also had today carrots, and we have rhubarb and beans. We've sold out of broad beans and carrots.
Are you cheaper than supermarkets?
We base some of our prices on supermarket prices to give us an idea of what current things are selling at. Because we're very seasonal here, we don't have out of season vegetables, so we take that into account, but everything has grown organically, so we're very reasonably priced, I feel.
Why do you do this? Why do you love being part of the gardens?
I've grown vegetables since I was much younger. I love the garden, I love the setting, I love just the whole environment is so good for your well-being, and you can come here any time, you can spend time here, you can relax here. It is a beautiful little part of Warrnambool.
I'll let you get back to it. Thank you so much.
That's okay.
Actually, I think I'll buy some lemons.
Oh,
buy some lemons.
Yes. Okay, we could do that for you.
Awesome.
It sure is a strange world that we live in, that buying locally grown produce straight from the grower is revolutionary these days, or an act of place-based activism. But that's the food system we live in, where if it's processed or packaged, it's very likely to be at least partially grown overseas. And even if we look at our own agricultural region, we live in one of the biggest food bowls in Australia, and a lot of it gets exported. And again, that's our part in the global system. And it's the same system that allows us to buy mangoes here in Warrnambool and apples all year round. So how effective is buying your lemons and lettuce at a local market really in changing this global system?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that people think they live within their own construct and the system is outside of them, but they live within the system. So I think the weekly market's a really great example of how we can elevate our local food bowl, our region, and have these producers who are micro businesses, micro farms. Literally, the produce is harvested in the morning, bought in the afternoon, and on your plate that evening. So I think really showing people that why we're such a strong region for it. We've got a great rainfall, great climate, and really getting people to understand that the food doesn't just appear at the supermarket. If we can support local producers, it means that the money's going directly and being reinvested in our community. Mm-hmm. So I think something that we really focus on at the garden is the seasonality of life, and there's a time to do different things. And so in winter, when the produce that's growing, then it's a lot of your brassicas and root vegetables and things. That's what your body wants to be having at that time, those really hearty meals, versus in summer when it's nicer and you want to be enjoying your meal outside, you're eating your tomatoes. The cost of convenience is something that we think about a lot in all of the inputs and things that go into those and the time that it takes to do things. I think we're in this really high-speed environment where things need to be instantaneous, but the garden is a genuine reminder of the fact that you exist in this greater context of things around you. So I think that's how we combat it. I think it's about understanding that there's a time for different things, and yes, convenience is great, but someone pays for that, whether that's the environment, whether it's the person who is working in a low wage to grow and supply this, or whether it's our children who inherit this massive plastic that's just going to be forever here. So I think, yeah, it's everyday activism that people have choice and people can be empowered to make their decisions. And I think, again, it comes down to maybe there's a little bit of preparation, maybe a little bit of planning, but I think everyone can sit and scroll on their phones for a couple of hours. It's where can you redirect that energy and really make something worthwhile?
And there's so much that is really worthwhile at the community garden, from their kids programs to their more recent collaborations with local Indigenous groups to grow bush foods. And Harvest 2026 is already in the pipeline. So no matter what your reason is for getting your hands dirty, and even if you've never even tried gardening, there's something for you.
It's your garden. It's everybody's garden. It's a place for everyone. And even if you can't grow a vegetable or anything, I'm sure there's something we can help. Someone's got to put the bins out. Yes, we still do have some rubbish. Gardening can be this scary kind of, oh, I'm not good at it or whatever, but we're all just learning. Like even the most experienced gardeners are always trying to think about how they can learn something new and grow. And I think that's the thing here, is that everybody's welcome. We will totally support you in whatever you need, and can't wait to see what new members decide to come and contribute.
And that's it for this episode of Social Innovations Warrnambool. Thank you to the Fletcher Jones Family Foundations for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you to Courtney Matthew, the convener at Warrnambool Community Garden, to Jeff Rollinson and Rob Porter, two long-time committee members, and to Christine Morris, who sold me some lovely lemons for a good price, I might add, and to Katrina Carey and her 7-year-old avid gardener son. These gardens truly are special. And thank you for listening. If you've liked what you've heard, then please share it with a friend. My name is Kirsten Diprose, and this is a Rural Podcasting co-production. To find out more about what I do, head to my website ruralpodcastingco.com.au. I'll catch you again soon.